And I kept saying, I had only one question that I ever wanted anyone to address when it came to lockdowns during the pandemic. And every week or every day at certain points, we had press conferences with the Prime Minister in which all the journalists kept asking the same question. Why aren't you locking down harder? Why aren't you going faster, deeper, harder? You know, a guest of ours called
it's
it
like
the
a Nike commercial, faster, deeper,
yeah,
harder.
well, it's like the pornification of healthcare policy. The question I always said to them is, why does no one journalist, and I have never heard a journalist ask any politician this question during the pandemic or even after, how many people do lockdowns kill? How many people have you estimated your policies will kill? Because you cannot make the decision to lock down until you have that figure. Because you have to weigh both things and say, well, look, we estimate we might save 50,000 people now.
Yeah.
And this will kill 1,000 people. In the situation where it's life and death, that's a pretty good deal. So we'll lock down. Or you might estimate, and we're increasingly starting to see this, that there's going to be a lot of missed cancer diagnosis. There's going to be lots of things that happen as a consequence of the approach we took.
Sure.
That have an impact on people down the line. That approach was never done because people lost the plot. People got scared and they demanded authoritarianism from the government. So I don't know how many people lay back and thought of England. I think quite a lot of people went, oh, there's a danger, shut it down. I want those people.
That's an important distinction, because laying it back and thinking of England means that you know it's bad, but you go with it anyway.
A lot of people wanted it.
To be clear, yeah.
And a lot of people, Scott, and we should say this too, they loved it. A lot of people enjoyed it. They enjoyed a break from their lives. They were paid by the government to stay at home. Yeah, I enjoyed a break from my life. I enjoyed it. For me, lockdowns were great. Literally, they were brilliant. They were great for our show. They were great for me personally. My son probably wouldn't have been born because I was working so hard. My wife and I were barely seeing each other, and the lockdowns gave us an opportunity to reconnect. We spent hours, at home together. We went for walks. We did all this stuff that we never had time to do before. Lockdown was great for me. And the government paid you to stay at home. You can understand why people would have enjoyed it. But you also have to think about people other than yourself when you're thinking about these things. And I could see that this was great for people like me, the sort of laptop classes. This was not good for a hell of a lot of people who were not in the same position. And that's why I spoke out against it. But I think we shouldn't underestimate how many people love telling other people what to do.
100%.
They loved it. They loved it.
They did.
So let's not forget about them as well. They should be ashamed.
I think a lot of the what's called I don't think I think it's regressive, but a lot of progressive talk today, progressive chatter today, is really just about getting off on telling other people what to do. It feels good.
It feels great.
And it's the same thing we see throughout history over and over again. You have conditions are bad. There's wealth inequality. We don't want to take this anymore. Tensions build. Maybe there's crop failure. In the case of the French Revolution, we have a revolution. The oppressed slowly becomes the oppressors. This is a great quote from The Dark Knight. I'll quote The Dark Knight. Love Batman. Adore Batman. In fact, if I ever move to Melbourne, there's a street called Batman Street, where that's the only street I'll live on in Melbourne. Maybe if I find a cheaper apartment, I'll live somewhere else, but Batman Street. Anyway, there's that quote, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I'm not interested in going into, talking about getting into the philosophy of this too heavily, but an oppressed group, and perhaps there's legitimate concerns about oppression, rises up and throws off the chains of the oppressors, and then they themselves become the very oppressors which they once claimed to oppose. It's the Animal Farm story. The last lines of Animal Farm. You looked from man to pig and pig to man, and you couldn't tell the difference. I think there is something deeply appealing about telling other people what to do.
No, it's power. And when people crave power, especially people who
I don't think it's good, by the way, but I think
it is.
It's a human.
It is what it is.
Tendency.
There is no getting away from it. People will always crave that, and especially people. The more power you actually have. I mean, there are some psychopathic people who just want more power for the sake of it. I have found that the more influence
they're
I
not
have,
psychopathic. They're human. There's evolutionary reasons for
well,
that.
not quite, because the more the thing that you become aware of as you have, we run a small business with employees, right? The more power, quote unquote, I'm using inverted commas, you have, the more responsibility you feel.
Yeah.
If you are not psychopathic, and you realize that the impact of your actions on other people is significant, and therefore you try to wield that power with great care, and you try to consider the interests of different people. Well, if we do this, yes, it might be good for me, but is it going to be good for other people? But if your life is one in which you experience very little power, if you are, quote unquote, oppressed, or you see yourself as oppressed, what that means is you don't experience yourself as having a lot of power in the world. And to those people in particular, the idea that, oh, here's a good reason for me to be able to take back the power from the oppressors, very appealing, very, very appealing. And so, this, you said progressive. It's funny, I was having a coffee with Maurice Glassman, who is a Labour peer, and he's on the left, but he's not progressive. I said, he said, that term progressive, it's very interesting, because if you go to the doctor and he says it's progressive, it's not a good thing. A lot of the people who find this way of looking appealing, and this was the case in the Soviet Union, the people who were in favor of, sending the kulaks, rich peasants, off to the gulags, were the people who were not able to be rich peasants because they were shit peasants. Right.
But they would have wanted to, be.
But they wanted to be wealthy.
Yeah.
And they saw people who'd become wealthy as a product of their hard work and creativity and whatever, as oppressors, as taking advantage. Why am I poor and this person is wealthy? So this politics of envy, this jealousy thing, that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. And this is why I worry about telling people they're oppressed, because A, it locks them into a victim mindset, which is not helpful to becoming unoppressed, even if you are oppressed.
I don't think the people selling the victim mindset are actually interested in liberating the people.
No. Well, of course not. They're interested in converting more people to the cause of thinking of themselves as victims. And so all I'm saying is, I think the idea of telling other people what to do, of having control, of installing a set of things that other people are supposed to do, is particularly appealing. And I say this knowing fully that it will trigger a lot of people. It's appealing to losers. It's in the name. It's appealing to losers. People who are confident and comfortable in their place in life, who feel like they're in charge of their own life emotionally and psychologically, and if they have a problem, they're going to go and take care of it. Those people don't have time to go around telling other people what to think, because they don't want to be told what to think themselves, because they know that the best person to choose the direction of your life is you. And so this ideology appeals to losers. That's why my view is, the more we encourage people to take charge of themselves and their own lives and not be losers, that's really how you defeat an ideology like that.
I would tend to agree. I would tend to agree.